Most of us work with chemicals every day and may have had some training. But we sometimes forget about the hazards and what can go wrong. People forget to answer 4 simple questions. What am I working with? Can it hurt me? How do I protect myself? What do I do if something goes wrong? If you can answer those 4 questions, you'll be ready to use workplace chemicals safely. The first thing to ask is, what am I working with? The quickest way to answer that question is to read the label. The next time you reach for a container of chemical product, stop and take a look. This is important information that serves as your first line of defense. Chemical manufacturers throughout the world use standard label information. This is referred to as global harmonization. It's a way of communicating the hazards of chemicals by using the same language and symbols regardless of what country your workplace is located in. Labels, as they come from the manufacturer, might look like this or this, but they all have the same 5 basic pieces of information: a product identifier and the name of the manufacturer or supplier, a signal word, hazard statements, pictograms, and precautionary statements. The product identifier is the name of the product inside the container, along with a list of ingredients that contribute to the hazard of the material. You may also find the shipping name, shipping numbers, and part numbers. Each label will include the name and contact information for the manufacturer or supplier. Now look for the signal word. This word is used to alert you to the potential hazard and to indicate the relative severity level of the hazard. Danger is for more severe hazards, and warning is for less severe hazards. Sometimes there is no signal word, but that doesn't mean that the product has no hazards. Next is the hazard statement. This is a phrase that describes the nature of the product hazards, including, where appropriate, the degree of hazard. This can be a word like flammable or toxic, or a phrase like respiratory sensitizer. Now look for the pictogram. These are symbols that represent various chemical hazards. These might include health hazards, flammables, oxidizers, irritants, gases under pressure, explosives, corrosives, environmental toxicity, and acute toxicity. The chemical you are working with may have more than one pictogram and pose more than one hazard. Precautionary statements are listed next. These give a description of the recommended measures to minimize or prevent harmful effects from exposure, improper handling, or improper storage. Examples of precautionary statements might include use gloves when handling, or keep out of eyes and off skin. Your organization may use a color code system on their labels. Blue is for health hazards, red for flammables, yellow means it's reactive, and white is for additional information. A number within the colored area tells you the degree of danger. It's a number-based system going from 0 to 4, with 4 being the most hazardous. So if you have a 4 in a red area, that means the chemical is highly flammable. If there is a 0 in this space, then there is little or no hazard associated with the product when used according to manufacturer's instructions. You might also see icons or symbols that tell you what kind of personal protective equipment you should use. Manufacturers' labels are the easiest way to find out about the material inside the original container. But what happens if you put something into another container? Simple. You label it. Otherwise, if someone else comes along, they won't know what's in your container. If you leave it on the workbench for a while, you might not remember what you put in it. Now, if you're the only person using the container, like a bucket of floor cleaner, and you'll use it all during your shift, then you don't have to label it. Still, it's a good idea to get into the habit of labeling. Let's face it, you can't fit everything about a material on the label. That's where this comes in, the Safety Data Sheet, or SDS. These documents contain detailed information about a product. It might look overwhelming at first, but it's organized logically into different sections, making it easier to find the information you want. Fortunately, the important information is at the beginning of the sheet. The first few sections have information about the product, the company that makes it, and the hazards, including the short-term or immediate effects, and effects that happen with long-term exposures. Your supervisor can tell you how to get a copy of the safety data sheet at your workplace. If you have any questions or need more information, ask your supervisor. Whether it's from a label, a safety data sheet, or your supervisor, hazard communication is an important part of your safety in the workplace. It's a lot of information, and it's probably not very practical to try to memorize information for every chemical. What you can do, though, is to organize the materials that you work with into chemical hazard categories like flammables, corrosives, toxics, reactives, or gases under pressure. These categories make it easier to remember the hazards and precautions for each group. For example, xylene, turpentine, toluene, and lacquer thinner are different chemicals found in paints, but they're all flammable liquids, so the hazards and the precautions will be pretty much the same. Flammable substances catch fire or burn easily. They can be liquids, like gasoline, a gas, like propane, or a solid, like sulfur. Corrosives include acids and bases, and are often used for cleaning, etching, or plating. Toxic materials can be poisonous to the body. We're used to thinking of toxics as liquids, like solvents, adhesives, and lubricants, but they can also be gases, like carbon monoxide or sulfur dioxide, or particle solids, like zinc or iron oxide fumes from welding, and dust from plant processes. Reactive materials such as oxidizers and explosives can change violently when combined with certain other materials or conditions. For example, an oxidizer adds oxygen to a chemical reaction, and that either increases the potential of a fire or can make a fire or reaction more intense. Explosive materials react so quickly that they explode. Finally, gases under pressure can present a range of hazards. Some of the hazards come from the gas itself and can be flammable or toxic. Then there is the pressure of the gas. An uncontrolled release can cause piping, valves, or the cylinder itself to rocket through the work area with the potential for serious harm or injury. All that leads to the next question for chemical safety. Can it hurt me? Chemicals can hurt you. Flammables can burn, and corrosives can damage the skin, eyes, nose, and lungs. Those hazards are pretty easy to understand. But toxics are different, and the effects on your body may not always be obvious. Toxic materials can be poisonous to one or more of the body systems. Their effects can range from short-term problems like rashes or dizziness to long-term effects such as cancer. How dangerous a toxic is depends on how poisonous the material is, how much you've been exposed to, how often you're exposed, and how long. And the effects of toxics can be cumulative, meaning that they can build up over time. Some materials have hazards in more than one category, and you need to protect yourself against all of them. The important thing is to recognize the hazards and use the proper techniques to control them. And that leads to the next question. How can I protect myself? Actually, there are a lot of ways. We'll start with flammables. Safe use of flammables means controlling sources of ignition, including flames, sparks, and other hot work, and using good ventilation to minimize the buildup of flammable vapors. Use containers specially designed for flammable liquids that are unbreakable, have flame arresters, and spring-loaded covers. Keep only small amounts of flammables in work areas, and make sure the containers are properly labeled. Make sure all containers are bonded and grounded when dispensing or transferring flammable materials. Cover containers when they're not in use, and make sure that any flammable-soaked rags are in covered, protected containers that are emptied regularly. Be sure to store flammables properly. Flammables should always be stored in flammable cabinets when they are not in use. Larger amounts should be placed in specially designed storage rooms, which have controls to minimize the risk of fire or explosion. Now, on to corrosives. Corrosive materials come in many forms and strengths and can eat away equipment. If corrosives can dissolve things that you work with, they can obviously affect your skin, eyes, and lungs. You need to make sure your personal protective equipment is appropriate to the degree of danger. This includes wearing gloves, protective clothing, and eye and face protection. Your best protection when working with toxic chemicals is to avoid getting the material in or on you. You can avoid breathing harmful vapors or fumes by making sure there's proper ventilation, or by using an appropriate respirator. Avoid eating or drinking hazardous materials by washing often throughout the day, especially before you eat, smoke, or use the restroom. Eat your lunch in an area away from chemical usage. Be sure all containers are labeled properly so no one eats or drinks an unknown substance. Keep hazardous materials off your skin by using protective clothing, such as gloves, aprons, protective suits, or liquid-proof boots. And prevent splashes in your eyes by wearing good eye protection, such as goggles or face shields. When it comes to reactive materials, pay attention to the storage requirements found in the precautionary statements on the label or the safe storage section of the safety data sheet. Generally, you want to keep reactive materials in their original containers in cool, dry places, away from materials that they may react with. Gases under pressure are usually shipped in cylinders. If the cylinder comes with a safety cap, keep it in place while the cylinder is being stored. Make sure that the cylinders are secured so they don't fall and damage the valves or regulators, and keep fuel gases separate from oxidizers like oxygen. So, you follow the rules and you take precautions, right? But what happens when something unexpected occurs? You need to know and understand the final part of chemical safety. What do I do if something goes wrong? Every company should have an emergency procedure for hazardous material spills, releases, or fires. You need to know and understand your role in this process, and that means knowing what you're dealing with and how to protect yourself. Generally, a small spill of a low-hazard material needs to be wiped up or swept up right away. Make sure you wear gloves or other protective clothing to protect your skin. Talk to your supervisor about proper disposal of the spilled material. Responding to large spills of certain chemical materials requires special precautions, so don't attempt this type of cleanup on your own. Leave it to the people who have the special training and equipment to do it safely. Your role in these types of emergencies may be to simply evacuate the area and activate your facility emergency response system. Shut down processes or equipment that may affect the spill. If you have a designated evacuation meeting place, be sure to check in with your evacuation coordinator or supervisor. That's about it. If you work with chemicals, don't get lazy and put yourself at risk. Remember to read product labels and be sure you understand the hazards and precautions listed on the safety data sheet. Follow the rules for safe handling and always protect yourself. Above all, ask the 4 questions. What am I working with? Can it hurt me? How do I protect myself? What do I do if something goes wrong?